Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Hope your day is starting off just as fantastic as it can. I want to share a portion of a speech here that our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, made about a week ago in Toronto, which I just watched, and it made me feel very proud to be a Canadian. And I'm going to share just a couple of clips with you that I think were a little bit underreported in the media. A 30-second clip that is really the most profound thing that any Canadian Prime Minister has said, directed exclusively and directly to the United States of America. Such a game-changing 30 seconds of speech that any prime minister in our history has, in our lifetimes, has ever made. I'm going to play that for you. Then I'm going to play another 30 seconds where he makes his major announcement, and then a little bit of a follow-up. So let's listen to the first clip, which, as I mentioned, I think is one of the most profound 30 seconds ever spoken by a Canadian prime minister in my lifetime. And he purposely chose to do it in French, okay? But there's subtitles and a talkover. Let's listen to this.
Since the Second World War, Canada has asserted its independence. Increasingly, we distanced ourselves from the United Kingdom and developed closer ties with the United States. We were by the side of the United States throughout the Cold War and in the decades that followed, when the United States played a predominant role on the world stage. Today, that predominance is a thing of the past.
Canada can work towards a new international set of partnerships that are more secure, prosperous, just, and free. We can pursue deeper alliances with stable democracies who share our interests, values, principles, and history. And we can help create a new era of integration between like-minded partners that maximizes mutual support over mutual dependency.
I want you to let that sink in a little bit here, how profound a statement that was from a Canadian Prime Minister. Of course, the Americans won't understand what he said because he spoke in a different language, in French. But what he said was that since the Second World War, we have decreased our ties with the United Kingdom and become more tied to the United States throughout the Cold War, when during that time the United States played a predominant role in world order. And then he went on to say, taking a direct shot at the United States, that today, those days of the United States playing the predominant role in world order are a thing of the past. He then goes on to say that we can form new partnerships and says, and I quote, we can form deeper alliances with more stable democracies. This is a profound thing for a Canadian Prime Minister to say in a speech. When Mark Carney speaks, he carefully chooses his words, and he's speaking directly to the United States here. At the end of the video, I'm going to talk more about how profound that 30 seconds was and how huge a difference it's going to make in the years or decades going forward in the relationship between the United States and Canada. Now let's watch the second clip here that made me feel really proud to be a Canadian, as it did the audience and everyone that was listening at the time.
10 years ago, Canada's defense spending fell to less than 1% of GDP. It has since doubled in cash terms, but it's still not close enough to face these mounting risks. The brave women and men who are protecting our sovereignty do not have the resources they need for a riskier world. Our military infrastructure and equipment have aged, hindering our military preparedness. I'll give an example or two. Only one of our 4 submarines is seaworthy. Less than half our maritime fleet and land vehicles are operational. More broadly, we're too reliant on the United States. And so for all those reasons, I'm announcing today that Canada will achieve NATO's 2% of GDP target this year, half a decade ahead of schedule. And we will further accelerate our investments in years to come.
So no more kicking the can down the road, no more talk of taking decades to get to this 2% of GDP spending for our military. It's going to happen this year. We're going to do it right away. And it's part of Mark Carney's bigger plan to stimulate or focus our economy and try and be masters of our own destiny. Because whether we like it or not, the Americans are being unfriendly trading partners now. They have tariffs on a lot of our exports, mainly aluminum and steel. And in this next clip, Mark Carney explains how accelerating our military spending is going to help those sectors. Let's listen to this piece.
The Defense Procurement Agency will centralize decision-making. We will ensure that Canadian workers and businesses benefit from the huge increase in defense procurement that will be required. Using Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, Canadian critical minerals, Canadian cyber.
We will increase our industrial capabilities and give ourselves all the necessary tools to respond to our own defense needs and seize the associated opportunities.
So I wanted you to hear his words directly from him rather than just reading some summaries in different media reports, because I don't think they really capture the profound nature of what he said in that first clip, speaking directly to the Americans, saying to them directly that we're not interested in only partnering with you in defense spending as we build our military. And this is a major, major thing, because unlike the trade of goods and services, buying Coca-Cola, exporting cars, importing tennis rackets, exporting maple syrup, those things are governed by the free market. They're affected by tariffs, but generally trade between the two countries. We talk about Canada exporting and the US importing, but it's individual companies that make decisions and try and sell their products in a free market. I'm using free in quotes because the tariffs are kind of affecting the free market now. Military spending is different. It's not just companies that make deals in a free market. Governments are directly involved in the procurement, the purchase and sale, making agreements country to country. The Canadian government negotiates directly with the US government when it comes to large contracts. And pictured behind me here is an F-35 fighter jet. The Canadian government had agreed to buy 88 F-35 fighter jets from the United States. This is a direct government-to-government negotiated deal worth tens of millions of dollars. And as reported on a CBC News article here about a month ago, Canada is now actively looking at potential alternatives to the US-built F-35. The remarks from our then Defense Minister Bill Blair came a couple of days after Portugal signaled that it was planning to ditch its acquisition of the high-tech warplane. This happened a little over a month ago when Mark Carney directed the Defense Minister to look at alternatives to completing the deal, the purchase of the F-35 fighters from the United States. Now, so far, Canada has already paid for the first 16 out of the 88 fighter jets, and Blair suggested that those first F-35s may be accepted, and the remainder of the fleet would be made up of aircraft from European suppliers, such as the Swedish-built Saab Gripen. Owning and operating a fleet of F-35 fighter jets over the next 4.5 decades is expected to cost Canadian taxpayers $73 billion, and all of those costs would basically be direct transfers from the Canadian government to the United States defense industry. Just this one deal on the fighter jets represents $80 billion to the American economy. And that's just one deal, but let me elaborate on this point, because since the Second World War, Canada's been so meshed with the United States, and it's been a bit of a bone of contention between the two countries. The United States always urging Canada to spend more on its military, and the Canadians always being a little bit hesitant to spend as much as the United States wants us to spend. And one of the factors that creates that dynamic is that almost all the defense manufacturers are US companies based in the United States. So Canada's defense spending budget, something like between 70 and 80% of it, represent a direct transfer of Canadian government money into the US economy. So of course the United States wants us to spend as much as possible, and the Canadian government's always hesitant. Well, it's about time now that one of our prime ministers has spoken out and said it clearly and directly. We're not interested in relying solely on you. You're not a reliable partner anymore. And we're going to broaden our alliances and cooperate more closely with the Europeans, the Australians, the UK, other countries, which he referred to in his speech as,
we can pursue deeper alliances with stable democracies who share our interests, values, principles, and history.
This was a very profound speech and represents an abrupt change in Canada's attitude going forward and our relationship with the United States. And I don't think it was reported in that way. I think just the headline reports were that Canada's going to spend more on its military. They're going to try and achieve the 2% target earlier. Well, that's true, but the more profound thing that you heard right from our Prime Minister's as he gave his speech was how we're going to shift from cooperating with the United States to cooperating more with other countries. So I thought I'd cover this one for you because I think it's going to represent a big change in our economy going forward as we try and manufacture and source and procure some of those things within Canada, and a greater cooperation and integration with Europe. But certainly a moving speech and a reason for Canadians to feel optimistic and proud. I think our Prime Minister knows what's going on and he has a plan, and he's very direct when he talks about it. He doesn't just spout slogans or rattle off cryptic sentences that you're not really sure what he means. He speaks very directly, and if you listen to the excerpts I played for you, it's very revealing the direction that our country is going to take now. If you want to listen to the whole speech, I will link it in the video description here. Thanks to CBC for posting it on their webpage. I'll link that in case you want to listen to the whole speech. It's about 20 minutes long. Thanks for watching, everyone. Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying my content, or leave some comments so that I can read what you think about this situation. I like to read all your comments, and sometimes I reply. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next one.